Hello, I'm Rick Pina with Worldwide Technology, and we are here at the DC Innovation Center. This is Worldwide Technology's office right in the center of our nation's capital. Today we are hosting many governors and political leaders. It's hosted by Cisco and WWT, so we are fortunate enough to have senior leaders from both companies. I am graced to be with Bob and Brian. Bob is actually a retired Lieutenant General, United States Army. I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do at your respective companies. Let's start with you, sir. Bob.
Thank you, Rick. As you mentioned, my name is Bob Ferrell. I'm the EVP for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at Worldwide Technology. And just that, having that military background, can't have just one job. I'm also the EVP for Public Sector Strategy.
Well, thank you very much. Brian?
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Brian Tippens. As you mentioned, I'm with Cisco as our Senior Vice President and Chief Social Impact Officer. You mentioned DE&I. My role is very much around expanding on the work that we do internally on diversity, equity, inclusion, extending outside the four walls of the company and ensuring that we're bringing the full power of our resources to the bear in the communities where we live and work around the globe around social justice and social impact.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for being with us today. So we've been having many conversations today about the evolution of the workforce, about the things that have changed since the beginning of the pandemic, about digital transformation, the need for even the workforce to evolve into understanding things like data science, cybersecurity, cloud networking, and et cetera. But if we would be honest and we look, there is a portion of our society that is underserved. And that portion of the society, they need the skills, the exposure, and the opportunity. So what are you doing about that? Let's start with Cisco first, Brian.
Yeah, we definitely agree with the hypothesis that the workforce is changing for all the reasons that you mentioned, and that we've got to be focused on bringing up that underserved. Our purpose at Cisco is to power an inclusive future for all. And being inclusive and focusing on all means we've got to be deliberately targeting that underserved community. And we've learned another thing that's changed over the last several years is kind of gone are the days where you've got to have that 4-year technical degree to be able to work in this technical economy. And so we've focused for a long time on what we call our Cisco Networking Academies, where they've been around for about 25 years and started as a way to provide certification and skills development for individuals across the globe, but in many places here in the US. And in those 25 years, we've been able to train over 17 million folks, many of them without college degrees, to be working in fields around technology and networking, and importantly, cyber, which is a growing space. We found it's a great opportunity to create new technology workers in those underserved communities, whether it's in high schools or working through nonprofit organizations or non-conventional areas like prison to work pipeline, for example. And so we're doubling down on that commitment. Over the next 10 years, we're going to train another 25 million. We focus very much on communities of color and women in that mix, but it's part of our way of creating that skilled workforce of the future.
And you said 25 million.
25 million over the next 10 years. We're at a run rate of about 3.5 million a year. It's very aggressive, but we're committed to making that happen.
That's very impressive. Thank you so much for what you're doing in that space. Bob, as a member of WWT, I know that we are committed to making a positive impact in the communities in which we live, work, and play. What are we doing at Worldwide Technology to serve the underserved?
I first want to just compliment Cisco when he said 25 million. That's a big number, and it really will have a tremendous impact in the community. Right now, this time of the year, it's February 9th, 10th, and 11th. It's BEA time, the Black Engineer of the Year STEM conference, and we're a big part of that. Why do I mention STEM in the conference? We're partnered with BEA. BEA is really doing an awful lot to identify the talent gap, specifically in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. When you talk about things that they're doing, I always like to do things in threes. The first thing, they're training, educating, and then also exposing them, to a larger audience. What type of audience? They're exposing them to companies. They're exposing them to government organizations. And they're also exposing them to senior Army leaders. Why? If you are a minority, you want to see folks at the highest level in those three categories. The second thing that they're doing, BEA is also, BEA and WWT is also exposing, companies to a large pipeline of diverse talent. When you talk about that talent, it's looking at organizations, it's looking at the companies that we work with, as well as some of the government agencies like in the military, the highest level again. The third thing, to keep that sustained pipeline, BEA is also committed to investing in the younger population of STEM students. How are they doing that? They're partnering with schools and then investing in the younger generations. And I mention that because we're doing the same. We recently had our 8th annual conference, STEM student conference, where we had over 200 students that participate. You know, we're closely knitted with or tied to BEA. We've been working with them for over a decade now. We provide mentors, again, to the underserved community. We also, again, partnered with schools like I talk about. We also look at the space that we're working in and trying to maximize our opportunities to reach out to that community.
Absolutely. Wow, that's a pretty big rundown on both fronts. So Bob, I know that you lead diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at Worldwide Technology. And while we'll continue to discuss it and focus on it, this is an area of work where the work is not going to be done anytime soon. So what are some of the things that you're doing beyond what you said at BEA to foster an environment of diversity, equity, and inclusion? I'll start with you, Bob.
Okay. Well, you know, we're into our 3rd year of our strategic plan. It didn't start 3 years ago. It started at the beginning of the company. But I put together a strategic plan. We're in the 3rd year of that plan. And we're pretty pleased at where we are to date. We've built a very good foundation and looking forward to heading forward. But again, we also look at it as it's a marathon, not a sprint. You know, when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, we look at, I would say that we've developed that plan into 3 concepts. We listen, learn, and act. When you talk about listening, we put together a listening program where it's very critical and crucial for our employees to be able to talk to our executive team. We do that twice a week. We focused on, again, providing that real-time feedback to our executive, and that enables us to retool, shape, and ensure that our program is really tailored to our global population. The second thing, in 2021, we developed a DE&I training program that's really closely tied to our individual management leadership program. You know, we focus on training, you know, what is inclusion, what is bias, what is difficult conversation, what is empathy. You know, again, having that real-time discussion where we're training all of our global employees. The first year was just focused on our leaders. Now, the next 2 years, we're in that 2nd year, we're cascading that program out to all of our employees. So again, that really brings out the, you know, what are we doing in the learning phase. In the last area, when I talk about ACT, we have employee resource groups. We have 7 of them. You know, they're focused on, again, you know, sharing their experience, collaboration, and then educating the workforce on what they do and what their culture brings out within their community. What's important about that? When you talk, lots of studies talk about this, that having a diverse workforce really drives innovation, really also problem solving, and then it drives to that bottom line profit. So again, I think that we're off to a very good start. One key thing that I would say that helps the program move forward, we have complete buy-in with our leadership, and that really helps.
Well, Bob, on behalf of Worldwide Technology, I just want to say, as somebody who benefits from this and is also involved with what you're doing with the ERGs, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. I definitely appreciate it. How about you, Brian, and Cisco? So obviously on a global scale, you're seeking to make impact. What are you doing in this space?
Yeah, I'd say first that I want to commend Bob and the WWT team for the work that's been done in 3 years. That's not a lot of time to get this much progress, and so I commend you for that. I agree, it's a journey, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint by any means, and we're all at various phases of our journey. We do a lot the same work internally with the employee resource groups and driving towards a representative workforce, but I'll say one thing that's a bit different that we've learned, and we've learned from listening, the listening that you said you did. In the wake of the racial reckoning of 2020, we listened to our team members and recognizing what was going on in the U.S., that there was a need for us to do more, that we could build on the good work that was done internally, but say, what else can we do to drive equity and inclusion more broadly outside the four walls of Cisco? And so we put pen to paper, we did a bit of a sprint, we call it, where we bring a lot of our resources together. That's how we approach our biggest business challenges. And we came up with what we call a Social Justice Action Office. And it's based on 12 primary pillars, these areas of focus, that some are traditional notions of diversity and inclusion, doing more around how we promote a diverse workforce, more about how we train, but extends much more broadly to areas like, for example, supply chain diversity. How are we spending our procurement dollars with diverse businesses? To how are we helping Black starters, founders of color, right, through what we call our Aspire Fund, a venture capital fund to fund founders of color, right, to bring more innovation from a diverse population into the space. To a significant investment in historically Black colleges and universities, helping to equip them with technology and elevating STEM education. Even because we're today in Washington, D.C., I'll say extending the issues of policy. How are we using our voice to weigh in on issues of equity and access to counsel and police reform, for example. And in aggregate, this 5-year commitment is probably about $300 million total investment. And usually we don't talk about the numbers, but I think it just goes to show how we treat this as a business priority and how important it is to us to be able to continue to drive that inclusive future for all.
Well, thank you very much, Brian, and thank you for what you're doing on behalf of Cisco and the impact that I know that you're having here in the nation and around the world. And so for those of you that are watching, thank you for your time and attention. At Worldwide Technology, not only do we focus on technology, obviously, but you see that we're very, very passionate about our people and the communities in which we live, work, and play. For more content like this, please visit WWT.com.